remember growing up as a young woman and being told to be really careful when I went out at night, to always stick with my friends, and to be really conscious of something called consent. And I didn't quite understand what this meant, but I slowly began to realize that I was growing up in a society where men rape and kill women. And I'm not saying that men aren't victims of these crimes. However, studies have found that around 90% of sexual assault victims are women, and around 90% of perpetrators are men. So it's not enough to say that it affects each gender equally. Like many women, I learned to bury my fear somewhere deep in my gut. And it doesn't surface all the time, but every now and then it comes back. And if you think about this, this is a lifetime of fear and anxiety that we as women have to face all the time, all over the world. So how many people here know someone who's been sexually assaulted? So like many of you, I listened to my friends and family tell me about the time it happened to them. And I listened as if it was another day and another story, because we slowly as a society begin to learn that this is the norm, and that usually nothing happens to the perpetrator. And I saw as news reports came out of women who had had sexual assaults, I listened to governments cover up sexual assault allegations, and I even listened as a president mocked a sexual assault victim. And one thing became really clear to me. Sexual assault is not treated as a crime, and victims are lying until they can prove their truth. And this isn't just a problem in the US. This is a problem of power, fear, and silence that touches every corner of this planet. This is a global epidemic. And it's created a world where half of the entire population has been given a clear message. Stay silent, we don't believe you, and just deal with it. So in the US, someone is sexually assaulted every 92 seconds. And of these thousands of victims, only 30% end up reporting their crime. And they don't report for many reasons. They might feel ashamed or they might feel a sense of blame. But less than 1% of reported sexual assault cases end in a conviction. And often, many of these perpetrators gain positions of power. So why would you report? What really sparked this project for me was when I was listening to a podcast about the thousands of untested rape kits in the US. And I didn't really know what a rape kit was, but it became clear to me that the current kit was not working, and this was a kit that had an immense amount of value in helping victims seek justice. This had to be a design problem. So I spent a year at the School of Visual Arts in a master's program in New York City investigating how the redesign of rape kits and responses to sexual assault could change the way that we treat victims. So what exactly is a rape kit? It's a tool and an exam used to collect evidence from a victim's body after the assault has occurred. This is what one kit looks like. It usually contains about 10 to 16 envelopes with instructions on the front, and then different tools like swabs and nail scrapers on the inside. It's typically done in the emergency room and can take anywhere between 2 to 10 hours to complete. So imagine you've just been sexually assaulted, you're in a state of shock and trauma, and you have to go to the emergency room, a really chaotic, overwhelming space, and you have to sit there for hours. Even worse, not every hospital has a rape kit, and there have been stories of women who had to drive up to 3 hours just to find a hospital that would take them. And you can see here in this map of Kentucky how difficult it might be to find a kit depending on where you live. So going back to my investigation in New York, I was starting to understand a little bit more about the kit and what it was, but I wanted to learn from those who interacted with the kit on a daily basis. And I began to talk to nurses, police, and different forensic scientists, but I spoke to a social worker who said something that really stuck with me. And she said, it's not about what happened to you, but it's about what happens right after. And it was in that moment that I realized how important the aftermath of a sexual assault is. And I decided to start designing 6 opportunities to help solve these problems. So the first was a public rape kit exhibition in New York's Union Square. And this was really to bring awareness around what a rape kit actually is so that people could understand that it's an accessible tool to them. The second is SAFE, an app that helps victims find resources immediately after a sexual assault occurs. So it lets them know what their options are and what the rape kit might be and where they can find a hospital closest to them with a rape kit. The third is Allay, an app that helps victims track their rape kit, stay in contact with police and nurse, and then hold police accountable if they don't test the kit. The fourth is Code, a speculative medical product that instantaneously detects DNA in order to find the perpetrator's DNA faster. And then the last two are redesigns of the kit. The first is Hark, a speculative over-the-counter health kit and rape kit service that allows nurses to come to the victim. Last is RN Advocate, or RNA, which is a rape kit redesigned to make the experience less cumbersome for nurses and doctors and brings the victim into the process. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on RNA because this is the one I'm currently moving forward with and hoping to bring into reality. So circling back to the exam, the current kit is designed for what is called a sexual assault nurse examiner, or SANE nurse. And these nurses go through extensive training on how to best collect evidence and how to do so with a trauma-focused approach. And studies have found that these nurses are extremely effective in improving the success of the evidence and improving the experience for the victim. However, only 13% of hospitals in the US have SANE nurses, which means that the majority of kits are performed by emergency room nurses and doctors who have no training and many who have never even seen a kit before. And what happens is they end up turning victims away. And I spoke to these nurses, and they described the process as something that was overwhelming, confusing, and had way too much paperwork. And I experienced this firsthand as a sexual assault advocate in a hospital. When a nurse was there and kept asking me what the different instructions meant and whether she was doing it right as the victim is laying there. So this is a tremendous task for nurses and doctors, and the current kit does not make it easy for them. Additionally, I spoke to forensic scientists who said that when nurses collect every single one of the steps, it makes it really difficult for them to find DNA from the perpetrator. And that instead, it's better to collect specific steps that are really specific to the victim's assault. But if you didn't have any training, you wouldn't know this. So I started to think, how could RNA improve this experience for these nurses and doctors who don't have any training? And RNA improves the process in two ways. First, it improves the instructions with visual aids, like you might see when you're building an IKEA chair. Second, it includes color coordination so that nurses can understand which envelopes are necessary and which they might be able to skip over. The second part is the victim-facing app, which allows the victim to see what the exam is going to be like rather just laying there, and also allows them to follow along step by step as they're going through it, and even helping nurses when they might feel confused. And SANE nurses have talked about the importance of letting a victim take control of the exam in a time when they feel as though they've lost all of their power. So RNA is a provocation that demands a shift and a change in the way that we treat sexual assault victims. And I'm currently seeking investments to help prototype this further and pilot it in hospitals in New York. But if there's anything I want you to take away from today, it's how extremely important rape kits are for victims, because it lets them tell their story and take action against their crime. It allows for serial rapists and perpetrators to be caught. And it brings awareness into what a massive problem sexual assault is in the entire world, so that hopefully one day, with something like RNA, victims can finally stop saying, "No one believes me." Thank you.